established and its impact. As we all know, AB 1506 from 2002 required all school districts that receive bond funds from either Proposition 47 or 55 to initiate and enforce a labor compliance program or to have an in-house program approved by DIR. In February of 2009, SB X29 changed the requirements in that it would now be shifted to the Department of Industrial Relations. They would perform all of the labor compliance monitoring themselves. But the statute doesn't take effect until the DIR regulations to implement that statute take effect. So you have to know how to comply with DIR before you can follow the rules in the statute. That occurred August 1st, 2010. So after that, all contracts that were awarded and were going to receive or did receive state funds were subject to the DIR compliance monitoring. And that wasn't just 47 or 55, but that was for every bond. And then November 4th, 2010, those regulations were repealed. So essentially it took that statute offline until the regulations come back. However, if, when, how, or whenever that occurs. So what happened is districts were undergoing a project. They were awarding contracts, assuming one thing.
Again, we're not asking for any other documentation, but we do need to gather a little bit more information. So in Part 5, Box 2, it's a little hard to read, but we tried to underline it. We added awarded on as well as the signed on contracts. It was a condition of the DIR LCP, was a trigger, was the award on date. So we need to gather that information just to be able to check and see, you know, when school districts fill this out, which ones were affected in this transitional period. And then if you'll go to stamp page 9, asking for just a little housekeeping information. We want to get the title and printed name of the person filling out the form, email address, and phone number. Just with the change, how complicated it's been, we just want to be sure we have an easy, quick way to contact the person who's filled out the form in case there's any questions. And that's about it for the 5005. Those are the only changes. And then to turn stamp page 10, that's Reg Section 1859.9. And we've taken a very similar paragraph that we inserted on the first page of the 5005. The only difference is we're now spelling out Department of Industrial Relations name, but it's the exact same paragraph. And we put this in here because not all school districts are going to be able to sign the 5005 depending on when it gets approved and goes through the whole process. So we wanted to just doubly be sure school districts are protected by putting it in our regulations.
So in going into this conversation, what I want to stick to first is the language here, which we kind of call a safe harbor, even though it isn't a safe harbor, but kind of a hold harmless clause. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the language. And then in the meanwhile, while it's really not subject to this, as the regs are getting redrafted, I would just love to hear issue spots that were issues with the past regulations so that they can remain on the table, so that we also hear them again for OPSC as we're going in and working with DIR. What are the loopholes that were in the past regulations that we need to make sure we close this time around? But that'll be after, you know, let's talk about this one part. Are we okay with the language? Are there any tweaks, any suggestions, any concerns? So I want to open it up to the IMP members to talk about that. Then we'll have public comment, and then we'll go into kind of part B of the LCP of making sure when the regs are being redrafted, we address any of the loopholes that were in the past ones. So anybody have comments?
Thanks, Steph. So it's between August 1st, 2010 and November 4th. Do we have any idea of how many applications or projects we're referring to here?
No, we don't, because we currently don't capture that information. We always ask for project, notice to proceed, contract sign date, but we don't capture the award date. We have received from DIR a list of districts that paid into the program, but there are also additional districts that have been calling us and telling us we weren't able to pay on the program because it was November 1st, and DIR was saying don't bother. So, and there isn't a record of that. So we don't know exactly what the universe is. We think it's pretty small, but exact numbers, no, we don't have that.
Okay. And so with the application and the questions that you incorporated, you expect to capture that information as it comes in?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Joe?
What happens after November 4th? For example, you have a multi-prime project and you meet the 5005 reg, but you haven't awarded all contracts by November 4th, which is something that we do a lot of. What happens then?
It would only